Let's go back to the analysis of the metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics behind video games. But we won't take so much time to read this time. Let's just take a look on some topics overall and see the exact idea behind, well, what is this, the philosophy behind video games. I've talked about this before. The main thesis is on the previous video, for example. But let's take a look on some details. Metaphysically speaking, we can theorize an ontology of video games and list their fundamental elements. Video games is an experience in which we are able to enter commands through an interface, graphic video, from peripherals based on a program, the game itself, whose logic establishes rules that we must respect while we intend to interact with it. In other words, it is an experience in which we act according to specific rules, in this case, in a specific world, which is the electronic multimedia, right? Since we interact with the help of several senses. To better understand what this entity, the video game, is, we will analyze it in parts, based on common sense and or more specific analysis, and only then we will be able to elucidate the idea brought here. So we talk about a lot of things here. No? I'm saying that the ontology of the video game is divided in these topics here. So you have the game itself, which is the dimension in which you have to respect all the rules, but of course you have to analyze uh, all the rules behind it in order to say that you are playing this game. So Wittgenstein has talked about this before, and we have to establish what are the rules that characterize the idea in the experience of playing this game. Once I was watching a comedy show about this, and a guy has drawn a mini chess table, in which you had only four spaces, and the professor has asked him, "Hey, what is this?" And the guy has said, "This is a chess table for beginners." So this is kind of funny because we have this impression that the game is supposed to be easier if it has more, not so much steps to follow, not so many rules to remember and to respect. So if you have less spaces to walk with your pieces, easier should be the game, right? But actually, the fact that you don't have the exact number of spaces that a chess table usually has, you're not playing chess at all. So you have to remember this. The game has to have uh, clear rules to be followed. So we make this question here. There must be rules, yes. Therefore, all then are what makes the game. To the extent that the human being, he looks for other activities to do when he finds himself in need of a game. That is, he looks for other objectives to fulfill. So the human being has created the game to simply make him or her thinking more. Like, imagine a situation that we are living right now, which is a peaceful world in which you don't have wars and you don't have so many things to do besides getting up and get to work, talk to someone, maybe read a book, or going to make some exercises or whatever. What do you usually do in your routine? And finally go sleep again. So this is no life, right? We are always in a search for some new emotions. And the video game was supposed to not only bring you a new game, a new kind of game, but an automatic one in which you don't have to worry yourself and see whether the rules are being followed or not. And you actually have much more of that interaction and immersion into the game, right? So yes, you must have an objective, you know, and normally you must be the only player, you know. Not necessarily must have an adversary, you know, but you can say that maybe the NPCs, the non-playable characters, are your adversaries in the game, but you don't have to have another human being playing with you. So in this topic, I talk about why does it have to be electronic. So we've talked about this already. It has to be electronic because we don't want to spend our time uh, like making sure that the rules are good. Of course, that we have bugs. This is part of the ontology of the game too. But we can say that when a game is suffering from a bug, it is not the game itself that we are playing, because we don't have momentarily the rules to be followed. So this is the main objective and why the video game itself above like the other games that we have. This is supposed to be the best thing in life because it is automatic. The bad part is automatic. Although we know that the newest games from the market are kind of strange, you know, because they are like movies and a lot of things are happening automatically, and a lot of people are getting bored because of this. And like for example, Nintendo is the only one who is not exactly doing this thing. Although they don't invest so much in graphics, they have the best way to make a game focusing on the gameplay. You know? I would say that Nintendo should put at the beginning of the game saying that we are not responsible for the funniness of this game. You must play the game in order to have fun. Well, contrary to the other video games from Sony and Microsoft that are making these automatic games a lot. So of course that you have to have the peripherals. You know, you have to have the joystick and some other things to interact with the game. Of course, that with time we have developed these glasses of virtual reality. You know, and of course, with the time we are going to enter the game itself. And maybe talking about ourselves, like I've told you guys before. Our main objective in this world is to create some kind of simulation in which we can decide what kind of life we want to have. And let me see more. Let me see more. So of course that we must have the image, and like a lot of philosophers have discussed this thing that the eyes are supposed to be the noblest of the senses of the human being, because, well, it is to it is supposed to make you feel the greatest of the beauty of the world. You know? So of course that the video game must have the best thing of the senses of the human being in its name, video game. It's not just a game, but a game with images. And this is one of the best things because although you are seeing what is happening on the TV, you interact with it. We know that on Netflix we have the Black Mirror, in which you have that episode, Bandersnatch or something, in which you have to control the decisions of the characters. It's a funny thing to think about because I could say to you guys that I've never watched this movie completely because I've chosen just one path and I've never seen the other paths. And nowadays I'm not so much interested in this because this is not a movie at all, right? If you are interacting with the movie, you are playing a game. No? So this is not a movie. No? So let's say what Agostinho, for example, says about the image. We can therefore, many of us together and at the same time, see a single object, although each one has its own senses. So this is the argument that he has to prove that images are the best things, you know, because they allow us to see together and at the same time a single object. Thus, even if my senses are one and yours are another, It may happen that the object of our vision is not distinct for you from what is for myself. That a single object, however, be present to both of us, and that we see it equally and at the same time. So he's saying that the vision is so noble that we can, me and you, at the same time, look to the object, and the object will be the same. If you make this comparison with the other things like smelling or taste, you have to eat something, and I cannot eat the same portion that you have eaten. Same thing for smell, same thing for things that we touch. But of course, actually, he hasn't seen that. I'm not actually seeing the same portion that you are seeing because we cannot occupy the same space. Of course, we don't have the same perspective. So we are not seeing exactly the same object. Just wait to see. People say that the old philosophers are forgiven because they are old. So let's forgive the guy. So I've created this concept here. The real and virtual facts that occur respectively to each type of thinking thing. I'm talking about Descartes, right? That if I think, therefore I am. This is how we prove that we must always be thinking time from time. We never stop thinking. And even when we are dreaming, the only way that we have to rest is thinking about something that we don't have control of. I speak of real and virtual because, as we have seen, unique events occur when a certain thinking thing, in this case a human, interacts with the video game, the virtual 3D world. How many times the character failed the object, for example, as well as in the 3D world, the types of emotion that a given experience caused by the video game can cause. So yes, you can have a lot of effects. Like you can be angry because of the fact that you haven't finished the challenge, and you will feel these consequences in the real world and the 3D world. So you can say that things are happening at the same time, and there's no objective way to say that this world doesn't exist as much as we exist in this world, right? Of course that it exists. Just because it is made by polygons, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And of course, let's not forget the eternal debate about the fact that maybe we are a simulation and someone is playing with us. I would be in a character, and for them, this is what would be the polygons, right? Of course, that we have sound, so that's why I have always preferred playing video games instead of just hearing music. Nowadays, I just feel kind of comfortable hearing music, drinking something, some kind of alcohol, Heineken or something, because I don't feel that hearing music, although I hear the best of the things, which is the Virgil Donati songs, Planet X, and some other projects of this amazing drummer who has changed the idea of rhythm itself. Although I'm hearing this guy, this is not enough to compare to the amazing experience of playing a video game in which you have access to all types of senses and experiences. So of course you have music. The creators of the game capture sounds from the real world to put on the game. And of course we have the bugs, like I've told you guys before. This would be the moment in which we are not exactly playing the game, because this is a time in which the rules are not being followed. So either you're playing another game or you're not playing a game at all. You have to decide this, but it's a shame. And to finish the ontology of the game, we must remember that it is important to have a plot. Although a lot of people would say that this is not really necessary, mainly concerning some Mario games, for example, in which the story is completely disposable, contrary to Sonic games. That's why I prefer Sonic. But I would say that games like GTA or I don't know, any games concerning cards or whatever. They will be just puzzles, just things to help you pass the time, having a kind of fun, but you wouldn't have the complete experience because you wouldn't have the plot. Yes, because if you are living in a real different world, it doesn't matter whether this is a 3D world or not. Since we have a story in our real world, they must have a story too in the 3D world. No? So you cannot ignore having a plot. And about the epistemology of the video games, this might be interesting to read. It's not so big. And we will list set of fundamental characteristics of video games in terms of their interaction with humans and how we deal with what we can or cannot know about the digital reality. So this is the fundamental law of the video games, right? Unlike many games in which they can end without the player winning, in video games it is the player who defines the passage of time that concerns his actions in this reality, so that even if he is defeated in the famous screen of game over, it only serves as an interface for the player's reality, but for the flow of the game, which has a beginning, middle, and end by definition, its reality is suspended waiting for the player, or there is even the possibility of its world persisting, right? So this would be a kind of epistemology for video games, and what we can know about the reality, the facts that happen inside this 3D world, right? And we would say that the player would be the god, right? And we are the responsible to make the passage of time, as long as we are turning on the video game. And but of course we have these online games. We would never know actually. Even though we are not talking about online games, the world, the 3D world, is actually persisting or not. That would be a similar effect to someone who has died. This person would never know whether the world has persisted or not. But these are the problems of knowledge concerning alternate realities like the video game, right? So resource contingency is always possible. So of course the players might be not so good on the video games, but the programmers have to always think about giving them enough resources to finish the game. Of course, that if the player be very bad at the game, maybe he would have to restart the game from the beginning. But this is something very rare, mainly on games of the contemporary times. Of course, the older games they were harder to finish, right? That's why you can always try again. So if you cannot do this, you're not really having fun, because you cannot seize the experience that you have grasped to try again and be much better in the video games. This is interesting that the external factors cannot influence the results, but we know that if my mother calls me to take a bath back then when we were children, we might lose our concentration and start to be bad at the video games, right? But in theory, the video game has its own reality, and it cannot be changed by things that happen outside that reality without the controller, of course. And of course, for the last thing, it's important to say what is exactly the rules of that reality. Like for example, that your character cannot pass through that wall. He or she cannot do this or that. And because if you don't know what you can do in a video game, actually, in theory, you could never start to play the game, because you can always think that everything is possible there. So of course that we must mess a little with the good sense behind our own reality, because sometimes, often, the video games that we have made are trying to imitate our reality. But we know that all these things here, this epistemology of the video games that I'm showing here, are about the things that the rules that the human beings have to respect in order to respect the definition of the video game as an alternate in real reality, and at the same time uh, making us having some kind of fun. But of course, the video game doesn't have this compromise of making you having fun. Right? So the conclusion would be the objective of this writing was to define the concept of video games, what it really is, and to expose that what we have in the so-called games industry is just a type of manifestation of its existence through which we become aware of its presence. So what we have created, what we call video games nowadays, is just a manifestation of this thing that I've tried to show in this paper. The ontology of the video game is about the fact that for the first time we were aware that there is an alternate reality which is as much as existent as we have our own reality here, and at the moment that we recognize this thing, we never know, and we will never know whether we have created them or vice versa. And this could only be uh, like clear because we are aware that since we are active in this reality, they are active too. We provoke actions and effects in that reality, and they can provoke this here too. So the video game is just a manifestation of our capacity of seeing alternate realities outside ourselves, and we don't know the exact number of alternate realities we have, right? And the video game that we have in this game industry and all this capitalist system is just a way to see that we have this possibility concerning the metaphysics of the world. The game allows us to realize something about ourselves, that reality is made of rules. We cannot simply do whatever we want, that we are always forced to think as we are something. Since the cogito from Descartes and Agostinho, human beings are always thinking and looking for problems to solve. That society is hierarchical, that we have winners and losers, that it's possible to reverse the situation as we are equal human competitors. That fiction is a mirror of reality with its own laws, not only because of the realism it has achieved, but because it establishes itself ontologically as a reality separate from ours, that we can learn through its own dimensions. We can experience, simulate, and test real and real things, preparing ourselves for the material, finite, and mortal world. That we are afraid of acting, of the consequences, that we make mistakes, that we want to try again, that we want to be perfect, competitive, that we want to win. That's it. These are the references. Of course, that this is an original thesis, and I was trying to help you guys to realize this as I have, and I'm very proud to call myself a gamer, although the industry is not so good nowadays. They are so repetitive, so automatic. But the opportunity that I've had to live alternate realities, being someone else, being someone stronger, someone's wiser, someone who could fire fireballs from my hand, I think that we must agree that this kind of life is much more interesting that we have in this life. But what we have is now is just congratulate the people who have created the video game and made us have fun until now. So just to show you guys, this is my poster from Dragon Quest, one of my favorite video game series. Not only because of the game itself, but the character design. But I must tell you that I love Final Fantasy 2 and Sonic the Hedgehog. So that's it. Thank you for your attention, and let's hope that the PS6 can come with better games that we have. Share with your friends, and I hope that you have liked it.